Just before I introduce our speaker, I would like to offer a land acknowledgement. Nature Calgary is located in the heart of southern Alberta, and Nature Calgary both acknowledges and pays tribute to the traditional territories of the peoples of Treaty 7, which include the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, the Piikani, excuse me, and the Kainai First Nations. The Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations, are also a part of the treaty. And then, of course, the Métis Nation of Alberta. We acknowledge their contribution to the land in the past and their stewardship of that land, bringing it forward to us in our world today. So I'd like to just take a moment and introduce you now to Amy Marcotte. She is our guest speaker for this evening, and she's involved with the Frank Lake Stewardship Group, and she'll tell you a little bit more about that. Amy was telling me earlier that she's been involved with the Frank Lake since really the Foothills Solar farm was going on. That's when you first got involved, is what I understood from that. And that she's really, picked up the mantle and sort of run with that. And I'll let her tell you all about that, what she does exactly. And is also one of the things she's working on is a relationship with Ducks Unlimited. So I'll turn it over to Amy, and I'll let you. Oh, just one last thing before Amy gets started. If you do have any questions, please add them to the chat. And when Amy is finished talking with us, we'll address those questions. So thanks, Amy. I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Anne. May I have the slide up, please? I would like to say thank you to everyone for joining myself with the first ever presentation on Frank Lake that I'll be giving. So I hope you find this informative and also shows the appreciation for this area. And I hope it provides you with a better understanding of Frank Lake and why this place is so special. Next slide, please. My name is Amy Marcotte. I am the chair of the Frank Lake Stewardship Committee. I learned my passion for wildlife conservation back at a young age. I'm originally from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and if there's anybody from Winnipeg, they understand an area within the city called, my apologies, called Fort White Alive. It was back in the day called the Fort White Center. And that's where I learned my love for conservation. And then when my parents moved out here in 98, they were trying to accommodate my love for conservation and the birds to where they moved out to Blackie. And they found that the Frank Lake was close by, and that is how I kept up with my love for birds. I got started with doing Frank Lake when the Foothills Solar was going through, and I became a very strong advocate for this area. I also found that with advocating for Frank Lake, it provides a more understanding of the areas that need to be protected from development and from encroachment from other projects. During this time, I'm also the Ducks Unlimited volunteer, specifically for Frank Lake. So I can try and be liaison between the committee, Nature Calgary, and Ducks. So when we do like certain projects before on their land, we can provide a center for communication so we can all come together and preserve this area and provide further conservation in many fronts. I would like to take a moment to um, dedicate this presentation to a good friend of mine and the long time caretaker, Greg Wagner, who passed away this year, which was very sudden and unexpected. And I hope that the committee can continue with the legacy he left behind and furthering the conservation and protection of Frank Lake. Next slide, please. Now, the history of Frank Lake. I'm going to provide some interesting before 1952 history that Greg shared with me, which I thought would be very interesting to share with you guys. Um, during the World War II, Frank Lake was having its dry spells. Um, in the lake experienced a fair bit of drought, which made it possible for the development from the High River branch of the Air Forces to build an auxiliary landing field within Frank Lake. And to this day, depending on the weather conditions and the lake conditions, if it's very silty in that, altitude, you can find still the laneways of Frank Lake's previous host of an air landing strip, which I thought was very cool. So I hope you found that very interesting. All right. In 1952, Ducks Unlimited was finding interest in Frank Lake to promote waterfowl and conservation, where they bought land to promote the Frank Lake area, with Ducks Unlimited wanting to provide more oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so nervous. My apologies. Um the partnership for this area, because of the wildlife and wanting to promote um waterfowl conservation. Um then they were going back and forth with trying to find um different ideas to keep Frank Lake from going dry spells and wet spells because of the flooding. With Ducks Unlimited, seeing firsthand with the droughts at Frank Lake, there are many plans throughout for providing stable incoming water to Frank Lake. At one point, the idea of having a canal built to carry water from the Highwood River to Frank Lake was in was a plan, but that didn't work. Then in the 1980s, the Frank Lake had another dry spell, and efforts were made to try and figure out a plan. Then in 1988, Cargill was looking at building a meatpacking plant in Foothills County, but they didn't know where to put the treated wastewater from because pardon me, Alberta Environment didn't want it going into the Highwood River. Then the idea and plan between Ducks Unlimited, the town of High River, Cargill, and Alberta Environment came together in 1988 to build a 10-kilometer long underground pipeline from the High River treatment plant to Frank Lake, which is the treated outflow that you can see at Basin 1, which is treated effluent water and is monitored by Alberta Environment very closely because of the type of stuff that can come through. Then in 2000, Frank Lake was designated as an IBA, which I will talk further on in this presentation. During that time, there has been infrastructure being built within the Frank Lake boundaries to where The substation, the Foothills substation, is built north of Frank Lake with the Alta lines of a 240 kV line and a 500 kV line going from southern Alberta from all the wind and solar projects going to north on the distribution network. Then, because of the placement of the Foothills substation, we have impacts from other areas wanting development in this sensitive area. We have dealt with in 2021 the Foothills Solar Project, which myself, Greg Wagner, Nature Calgary, AWA, and CPAWS, and a whole bunch of others were involved. I'll talk to that further in this presentation. That during that time before the AUC, which is the Alberta Utilities Commission, who gives permission or denies projects of this type of nature, that Frank Lake was upgraded from an IBA to a KBA. Then, in that time in 2023, the AUC denied the solar project due to impacts environmentally and also not following certain regulations of directive that they must follow for not being in the IBA. Then comes to the current project that we have and we are dealing with, which is the Laramie Battery Energy Storage System, or BESS. And that right now is before the AUC, and I will further explain that further on. Where is Frank Lake located? I have had questions and I've had people ask, is Frank Lake by the Frank Lake slide? No, Frank Lake isn't near the Frank Lake slide. Frank Lake is actually east of High River and no relation to the Frank Lake slide down in Crow's Nest Pass. Frank Lake is 40 kilometers south of the city and east of High River. Now, the only sign to get to Frank Lake is a little green sign that says 530 Ave, which many people have gotten lost. The committee is going to be trying to work with Foothills County to put proper signage up so we can help get people not lost. There are many sites and areas that you can see for beautiful, and I mean absolutely beautiful, landscape pictures, beautiful bird pictures, and just enjoy nature in itself. Basin 1 is the most popular one for the gate and accessing for Basin 1 and 2, and a lot of people enjoy doing the outflow images because of the islands for the birds. I personally like going to Basin 3, which is the most southern area of the IBA and KBA for this area due to its quiet, less traffic, and I find it's more one-on-one with the birds. And the pictures that I have gotten from Basin 3 is just amazing. Basin 1. Basin 1 is also very popular due to the boardwalk and bird blind. The boardwalk is about, I'll say, about 300 meters from the shore to where the blind is. The blind was put in with contributions from Cargill to help with people enjoying bird views and also for photography. Also, on the left-hand side or your right, you would see a bat box. Another popular area for birding is the Basin 1 outflow area. This is the area where the treated effluent water from High River and Cargill come, and it is discharged here. This area is very popular because it's very close to the two islands, and the islands are very popular with pelicans, crest or double-crested cormorants, and also gulls. One sign that you will see very common around Frank Lake is the warning that please do not go into the water. It is treated, but not necessarily safe for you. So I don't encourage anybody swimming. I've had people ask about canoeing. I leave it up to them, but I wouldn't do it. Also in Frank Lake, we have an invasive species of the Persian carp. So if anybody wishes to go fishing, they can. It's just please take them with you and dispose of them properly. They are an invasive species. You cannot release them back. And if you do, it's just don't leave them around. We've had some interesting issues with fish. So I kindly ask if you do want to fish, I'm not going to stop you, but just dispose of them properly. Basin 2. I've taken this picture myself, and the views here at Basin 2 are amazing. I have seen very diverse populations of birds here. I have seen American coots. I have seen western grebes, very popular with Canada goose. And also, I have seen a lot of fishing from our great blue herons. To help control flooding and high water issues with Basin 1 and 2. This rear was put in for a self-management for when the water levels are high between basins 1 and 2, it can self-regulate and drain into basin 4 or 3 and 4. This way, it helps prevent overland flooding and also to promote the downflow of water to the other areas within Frank Lake. Basin 3. I just love how quiet it is here. There is a parking area that has signs that about the ducks unlimited. It is a nesting area, so please walk. And if you would like to bring your dogs, just have them on the leash, please. Um, there's a couple trails in this area that you can walk to different areas of this basin, and the views are just amazing. So if you go on to the east side and you take pictures of the west, you will get all the birds plus also the mountain view, which is just beautiful. Here is again another rear for controlling flooding and water mitigations within basins 3 and 4. This is also monitored by Alberta Environment for water quality and other instances that they need to. This particular weir has metal slats, so when you walk across and when they're doing water mitigation or overflow, um, they will open and close these. This particular canal further down drains into the Old Man River. Frank Lake IBA. BirdLife International started the program in 1985. Frank Lake was designated as an IBA based on significant number of birds congregating during the breeding season. There has been documentations of um, Franklin gulls of a population of about 10,000 documented at Frank Lake, which is great. Um, it's also been a presence of at-risk species. At Frank Lake, we currently have 60 at-risk species that are either provincially protected or federally protected. The only downside with IBAs is that there is no legal protection for these areas. However, we do hope that counties and other municipalities do take these areas into consideration and provide some level of protection or acknowledge their significance and do planning accordingly for these areas. Because despite the areas being of high use, we also want to protect them for future generations. So if we can work as a team for areas of this nature, the better we are for protecting nature for future generations. Frank Lake is now a KBA. KBA is a key biodiversity area. It is a program and a partnership of 13 global conservation organizations to prevent the loss of biodiversity. Major differences between KBAs and IBAs is that the KBA program is focused on a broader standard of biodiversity and the IBA was focused on birds. So when Frank Lake was being evaluated for a KBA, they took the bird populations into account. They also took the types of plants and other biodiversity within the area. So it wasn't just centered on birds like the IBA program, but instead looks at the whole ecosystem as a whole and provides a value for this area. Frank Lake was identified as a KBA in September of 2022, recognizing the significance of this area and upgrading its recognition both internationally and nationally, which I think is great and shows how valuable Frank Lake is to the greater community, both nationally and internationally, for different types of biodiversity. Just like every area, we have risks. The first risk that was put into this area in 2012 and throughout 2015 was the proposed Altalink Foothill substation and the 12040 kV and the 150 kV line. Now, with the AUC proceeding, there was acknowledgement from both Altalink and the AUC of the significance of this area due to it being a monitored site due to species at risk. So Altalink proposed two different routes. The preferred route is the one in black. The alternate route, which we hoped and thought they would ac- accept, is the one in gray. Now, the substation where it is today on the north end was supposed to be proposed for the southwest area of Frank Lake, so it would be less impactful. But during the process of hearings and also going back and forth for feasibility, they decided to put the substation north of Frank Lake with the new 240 kV line and the 150 kV line going going south from the substation along the northeastern or the northwestern edge of Frank Lake, going down the western side of Frank Lake, and then skidding over southeast, which has been proving to be problematic. Um, Due to these lines and with the data that Mr. Wagner provided with the Foothills Solar, bird deaths are occurring. Now, we hoped that with the data being collected and Altalink trying to do mitigation, which is after the fact, with putting bird markers. That's if you go to Frank Lake in the evening, you see the shiny on the power lines when it's very windy. Those are the bird markers to help tell birds that, oh, don't fly here. It's got some lines, but that doesn't eliminate the death count that is still occurring. It reduces it, but not stop it. Another subsequent development due to the location of the Foothills substation and Altalink lines is Foothills Solar. In 2021, Elemental Energy proposed a 150 megawatt solar facility within the IBA boundaries and also within the setback that Alberta Environment has stated for the Wildlife Directive for Alberta Solar Energy Projects, which is AUC um, Best Management Practices 200.1.1, where it stated must not be 1,000 meters within an IBA KBA. So the company was arguing that the IBA and KBA boundaries were arbitrary and that they could be there and basically ignore the best management practices. When Greg and I went to the town meeting that they had at the Blackie Community Hall, I was speaking to the environmentalists and I was telling them the significance of this area and, this is a monitored site, and we were very brushed off. I then went to get Canadian Wildlife Services involved. So we were going back and forth, they were under the impression that the project was already built. So, and I'm like, the project isn't already built. So, we went back and forth, and to this date, Canadian Wildlife Services is the first s- um, federal agency to get involved in Alberta before the AUC for solar projects. I was a part of the Frank Lake Concerned Citizens Green Group, the FLCC, and Greg was a part of the Nature Calgary, which he did his own proposal and subsequent submissions. We also had CPAWS involved, AWA involved in objecting to this development, which was really great because we need people to actually stand up for conservation when it's really needed, because if nobody speaks up, these areas do get lost. Then on April 20th of 2023, the Alberta Utilities Commission, the AUC, rejected the Foothills solar development. They based their decision on environmental risks, and they acknowledged, which is great for Frank Lake, that the boundaries for the IBA and KBA are not arbitrary. They take the whole life cycle of the said birds and other life in here, and they acknowledge the significance of that. So when they stated that, it was a win-win for this area, and it's nice to actually have certain organizations speak up, and it does work when everybody works as a team to help protect areas of significance for conservation. Now it brings us to the current project, which is Larmade. Larmade is a BESS project, which is a battery energy storage system. I have a Facebook group that is that I keep up to date on Stop the Larmade Best Project, and I try very hard to keep everybody up to date. In August of 2023, Greg Wagner contacted me about the proposed project, and he told me, Amy, go to work. So when he said that, I know I'm going to go to work, like I did with Foothills Solar. They are proposing 100 megawatts, which is about 100. They look like sea cans, but not exactly sea cans of batteries. But with the future expansion, which is shaded in light green. The current development is the green, and the next is the light green for their expansion, going up to 400 megawatts. So that will be with either site A or site B. They are wanting 400 of these CCAN type, or they look like CCANs, but they're not, but pretty close in size. That's the only way I can describe it, for battery energy storage. Now, with this project, it's on the north side of the IBA and KBA boundary, which is not as good of a site because it has a lot of environmental impacts. I'm a part of the Frank Lake Bird and Biodiversity Group, which is the FLBBG, which is comprised of Nature Calgary, which is the Stewardship Committee, Nature Alberta, Birds Canada, and we were granted limited standing due to the location because it's just outside of the IBA KBA, but we are still affected by this development. Another organization that has stepped up and we are very grateful to is AWA, which is Alberta Wilderness Association. They also got a limited participate standing, and have also submitted their letters of objection to the proposed project. Currently, the project is still in approval stage or denial stage. Just as of today, the AUC put a questionnaire out regarding certain information that they had questions about regarding the oral hearing, and the FLBBG has requested, if the information with the new evidence they have requested, if we can also intervene and give our view to help support our efforts in protecting this area from development. because we must remember once development of any kind goes into this area, opens the door for further development, just like what is happening because of the way the Foothill Solar sub or the Foothill substation was placed just north of Frank Lake and within the IBA-KBA boundaries. So we're trying to put a stop and saying, you know what? Just because of poor planning of the Foothill Solar or the Foothill substation shouldn't be an open door for further encroachment and development. Because once again, once development is given the go ahead, it opens the door for further encroachment and further development, which later on is going to affect the status, the conservation, and also could possibly impact the environment if there's ever anything that goes wrong with Frank Lake IBA-KBA. One thing I would like to mention with both Foothill Solar and the Laura Maid project, we have been very grateful and thankful to Foothills County objecting to these projects. It's very hard and few that with different projects that we have the amount of support that we do. This furthering the support and acknowledgement of how significant Frank Lake is. Why should we care? Frank Lake is in a unique situation. Topography wise, Frank Lake sits in a bowl. So we have an underground aquifer that goes all the way from Gladys Ridge south to past Frank Lake. We have it going east into Vulcan County and about west as I think not to Highway 2, but close to it. This aquifer also helps regulate Frank Lake for water, and it also provides the area as a big giant sponge. So it helps trap carbon, it helps promote the retention of water. So when we do get dry spells, it releases it slowly. And this is another reason why this area has really not had any significant droughts, which we are very grateful to. And we have very good class two growing land. It is also a hot spot for biodiversity on the prairies. With Frank Lake, due to its unique situation, we have some resident moose. We have one bull and two cows that like to trot around the area. You don't see that very often, but from time to time, you will see them within the IBA KBA and going out of the KBA or IBA KBA. We've had them come very close to the town of Blackie. We've had them go north and we've had them go west. Also, with this, we have American badgers in the area. We also have 3 different herds of mule deer in the area. We have foxes. We have so much that it it just provides a more reinforcement of how unique this area is because of the way it's situated and how everything has come together in conservation wise through Ducks Unlimited and other organizations working together to preserve this unique area for generations to come. With Ducks Unlimited also being a partner and owning the land within the Frank Lake IBA-KBA closer to the lake, it provides recreation opportunities for people to connect with nature. With that, it provides great photography for bird watchers. It provides wonderful just walking out in nature and enjoying the sounds and just relaxing from the hustle and bustle of busy city life. And also, too, it promotes conservation in different forms. And also, we have where the gate is closed at the main entrance at Basin 1 for fall hunting season. So, right now it's hunting season, so the gate is closed. And then the gate will reopen probably about April, early April, late April. It depends on how the road conditions are. And then people can drive into the past the gates to the roundabout in park where they can walk to the duck blind and onto the boardwalk, and then follow the little trails for bird photography and so forth. Now, during the summer times and spring, Ducks Unlimited does provide porta potties and a garbage, but just do note that if you do go out in the fall and winter, there are no porta potties. It preserves biodiversity for future generations. For providing future generations with the unique experiences that you and I can have at Frank Lake provides more reassurance that we can conserve birds that are at risk and help grow populations so they aren't lost. I would personally hate, that's a very strong word, for my children to see different bird species in a zoo. I would prefer them to see them out in nature and showing them that conservation, sometimes hard and sometimes difficult, does pay off long term with having different bird populations come back or populate the area to the amounts that we have never seen before. Bird populations at Frank Lake. Records of birds of Frank Lake go back to the 1960s. Most of the observations were recorded by Calgary Bird Club slash Calgary Field Naturalist Society. So they are now called Nature Calgary. There are 256 bird species documented in the area, and I would also like to note there are 219 additional species with plants, bugs, insects, amphibians on top of the 256 in the area. So I've seen people come here to just take pictures of the butterflies, the flowers, and also trying to find some Western uh, tiger salamanders because they are in the area. I have seen them, which is great because they are a species that is kind of struggling. There are over 60 bird species that are designated as at risk by provincial or federal agencies. So, with that, it provides further reinforcement in how conservation is working and also for further generations to enjoy these species. Because if we provide havens, like, say, Frank Lake, for these species to thrive and come back, we are preserving their future too, because they also have a right to live. They also have a right to enjoy because they have. I know people are like they don't have feelings, but sometimes you get attached to certain ones that come around, and you're like, oh, that looks sad or fishing. But I really strongly support that conservation sometimes, even though it's not seen right there, right then, over the long term, it does work. Um, we have started to have stable populations of Western grebe at Frank Lake, which Mr. Wagner was so happy to see many years ago. Just the first one in the area was great. But this year I've seen breeding pairs of Western grebes, which is is just mind-blowing and fascinating to see because an area that never had them is now having them, which I just once again just shows my passion for conservation that it works if you're willing to put the time and effort into and give it time. Kind of have to baby it sometimes for it to blossom. And I've been watching Frank Lake since 98 and seeing it now is just it's just mind-blowing on the bird species and the traffic that comes through here now. It's great because overhead in fall, you see hundreds and thousands of geese just going through, having a stop over at Frank Lake in the field, grabbing some leftover grain. It's just amazing and it's so beautiful. The notable birds that have been seen at Frank Lake. Whooping cranes have been seen at Frank Lake, a very rare sighting, but they have been here. There was a pair of two whooping cranes, I believe in 20, 2021 or 2022. And that was a mind-blowing seeing them because normally they're not in this area. And seeing them here, it's like, wow, you're off course. I am proud to announce that this year, Frank Lake was the first site in Alberta to have a sighting of pink-footed goose. I thought that was amazing. A first in this province. That is just showing I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional because I love this. It's just showing how conservation works because you'll get species here that, well, I didn't expect them, and having a pink-footed goose and having the first sighting in Alberta, it's just beautiful. Also, too, I would like to make note too, this year in September, we have had a Sabine gull at Frank Lake. Too this year, another rare sighting for this bird, but it has been marked in other areas. But for Frank Lake, it's starting to become a little more of a common sight, which once again I think is amazing. When you talk about Frank Lake, you cannot resist talking about Elsa. Elsa helped put Frank Lake onto the map with different organizations like CBC, the Western Wheel, Okotoks Online, about this unique and fascinating bird. Elsa, the white pelican, has served 2 years at Frank Lake. The first year that she was noticed, she was dealing with hurt, broken, injured, we're not too sure, wing that Mr. Wagner thought because of the power lines, that's probably how she got her injury. They didn't want to interfere with her, so they let her be because she had a food source, which is the invasive Persian carp, and she had the islands for shelter and was good. There was concern about the winter time because we've never ever at Frank Lake had a pelican over the winter, but Elsa toughed it out and showed that she could do it. Mr. John Reesback was very popular on Alberta Birds in documenting her journey throughout the different seasons. And trust me, I was one of them with pins and needles waiting for that update when he would go out to see how she's doing. She survived with temperatures going down to -58. But once again, due to the unique biodiversity ecosystem with the invasive carp, which is a food source, even though invasive, Mother Nature taking care of itself, and also too having the treated effluent water, which was warm, provided her also warm waters which wouldn't freeze over during the winter. And because of that, the Persian carp was attracted to the warm waters, which she had a smorgasbord and was just happy. So seeing her survive her first winter, we were all cheering because trust me, we were all on pins and needles. Then came her second winter, which she did fine with regular updates from Mr. Reesback of Elsa. Then the following year, year 3, I believe, she started to test her wing and fly around. We had instances where Mr. Reesback documented where she would fly and then come back. She would fly again and then be gone for about a day or two and then come back and rest for a bit. And then the last sighting, she was flying away from Frank Lake. And we to this day hope that she is well and safe and with her other pelican friends, wherever they might be. So, once again, a unique circumstances at Frank Lake, which shows that, you know, even though we have Persian carp as an invasive species, Mother Nature takes care of itself, which has also been proven to encourage other bird species that are fish eaters to come to Frank Lake, which has been fascinating. Frank Lake Stewardship Committee. We were formed after the sudden passing of Greg Wagner of April of 2025. Once I was notified about Greg's passing, which I found out on AB Birds, I was in shock. But I knew with different circumstances that was going on with Frank Lake that I had to move very quickly. So I sent out emails to Nature Alberta and Birds Canada, letting them know of the situation and advocating for a new caretaker or organization to pick up where Greg left because I sure didn't want the work and legacy of Frank Lake, which Greg worked so hard to be lost because I wanted to preserve his legacy because it is a tragedy if we let it go because so many volunteers, so many people put time, effort, money, documentation to make Frank Lake what it is today. But then I got an email back from Birds Canada stating that Nature Calgary is stepping up to the plate, in which I'm still grateful to this day for Nature Calgary doing that. And then I requested how can I be involved given the certain circumstances regarding the AUC project, which was the Larmaid. Pardon me, that was before the AUC. I then joined with that, and over the coming months, we worked together, and I was elected as the chair, and I have a vice chair, which is great. And we are trying very hard to keep Greg's legacy going, and also to do certain projects that he wanted to do in his lifetime, but were sadly and tragically unable to do. So we are wanting to put legacy projects forward. The committee project. We are going to be doing a bunch of projects in the area to help preserve and also add to conservation within Frank Lake. We are wanting to build on the bat monitoring program, which is the bat community monitoring program. I think I said that right. It's a long name to remember. So we gave them the situation of the bat boxes, and they're like, "Oh, we don't do bat boxes over water anymore because we have new standards." So the committee currently is working with Ducks Unlimited to seek permission to put new bat boxes throughout the Frank Lake in different areas of Basin 1, 2, and 3 to promote bats because this area does have a unique bat population. And also, too, bats are now protected in Alberta. So we are wanting to also contribute to conservation in that front. So we are working closely with Ducks Unlimited to do that. We are also wanting to work with the Alberta Native Bee Program for putting up native bee boxes to monitor the native bees that we have in this area and to also promote conservation because bees are struggling and it follows within our conservation efforts. So we are also working with Ducks Unlimited to proceed with doing that program. We are also wanting to do legacy projects in Greg Wagner's name to promote his wishes and to honor his dedication and work. We are working towards updating and rehabilitating the nest platforms that are throughout Basin 1, 2, and 3. We are also going to be doing a long-term project, which is going to be a little complicated, but we are up for a challenge. A project that Greg Wagner wanted done was the rehabilitation of Island 2 and 3 at the outflow area. Because of the outflow and the flow, the erosion has cut those islands down quite a bit. We are going to be working towards doing rehabilitation of that. But the thing that makes it complicated is ducks has made it known, and due to nesting seasons in the spring, we can only do the project in the wintertime when there's no birds. So we have an interesting project to do. Also, the committee is wanting to put up a Motus Tower. Well, with this Motus Tower, it's a tall structure that if I remember correctly, gives out radio frequencies and tracks different bird species. And what we want to do is band quite a few of the different species of birds at Frank Lake around their little foot, and then we can track them with guarding their flight paths and also see how they interact with the area. Because in North America, there are different MODIS towers throughout the US and Canada that we can correlate each bird with each station so we can follow the flight path and thus also giving us more data and information to further conservation efforts of Frank Lake. How you can help. We are going to be doing different campaigns for Frank Lake for fundraising for bat boxes, bees, and other conservation efforts. Also, with doing the MOTIS and the long term project of the two islands. You are welcome to donate. Everything's all tax deductible, and everything will be going to Frank Lake for conservation efforts. We encourage donations, but we also encourage volunteer work as well. How you can help. There are different forms of help that we are looking at. Right now, we are making up a list of different categories in which we are seeking constant volunteer work. We're working for citizen science. Now, with citizen science, that entails coming to Frank Lake, helping with the different monitoring programs and documenting them. With the bird counts and that, you would be putting them onto eBirds. If everybody is familiar with eBirds, that is a great app for documenting birds. We're also doing biodiversity counts, and also too, please watch out for Nature Calgary website and Facebook page. We will be doing campaigns for garbage cleanup and also invasive species removal. So we are trying very hard to try and get everything all set up for the new year. So by January, we'll have an idea of what we're looking for volunteers and what different projects or other volunteer opportunities are available for individuals who are wanting to help support Frank Lake. We will be doing with that fundraising campaigns. We will also be hosting field trips like bird tours. So if you are interested in photography, Frank Lake is an awesome place to come see. People on the land, they come and sometimes, just walk around and just if you notice anything out of the sort. This year so far, I've had to clean up a vehicle's front end because somebody didn't know that there was rocks on either side of the road, so they kinda went vroom over and ripped off their whole front end. I had the light assembly, you name it. My son got a kick out of it because he got to go to Papa's and use the saw and take it apart, so he got some fun out of that. Um Also too, we've had instances of people wanting to have fires at Frank Lake, so, the more we can have for people just monitoring, like, just if you see something out of place, just bring it up, because that also helps too. Because the last thing we want is a fire at Frank Lake, because that would be very devastating. We will also be looking at maintenance and repairs. So when we have different projects, like say the bird or the bat boxes or the bird platforms that are needing TLC, we would need somebody because I'm not that handy sometimes. So I need somebody a little more handy that can help do repairs and also help, say, install the bat boxes once we get permission. I like to take this time. If you guys have any questions, I will try my best to answer.
Thank you, Amy. That was really interesting. A ton of information. I didn't realize so much was going on out there. That's really cool to hear that. One of the questions that I just had, there aren't any others in the chat. I'm sure people will put some in as they're listening. Where does most of the funding come from? Obviously you have some volunteer donations, but where else does your funding come from?
Well, right now, because we are a new committee, because Greg never did any of the funding, Ducks has their own funding, which they do themselves, and they gave us, the committee, the permission to do our own funding because they want to keep everything separate so there's not intertwining. So with the funding, it will go through Nature Calgary, under the heading for Frank Lake Stewardship. So those, anybody that makes donations towards Frank Lake will go towards that, and then that will help us with budgeting and designing and planning for what we can and cannot do for projects.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's good to
Oh,
know.
sorry, I'll
There,
also add, sorry, and
sorry.
I'll also add to that, Nature Calgary does have money, which we are putting towards some of these projects, but we're also going after grants. So we're hopefully going to be applying for an ACA grant, and then
Yes.
we'll be looking at some other grant opportunities. So if there's anybody out there who likes writing or grant writing, we'll love to talk.
That's great. That's really fantastic news. There are a couple of questions in the chat. The first one is, let's see, how do you get to, oh, I'm sorry, which is the best season to go and see the birds at Frank Lake? Start and end of migration, or are there other times?
Well, with Frank Lake, it's in a unique situation because sometimes, like I said with Elsa, she was there all year, even winter, so we had foot traffic with her. Spring and fall are really good, but you will see a whole wide diversity of birds throughout the year. We have a stable population of American white pelicans. We have double-crested cormorants. We have a stable population of gulls at Frank Lake. We also have the white-faced ibis there. We have documentation of coots. You name it. There's birds there all spring, summer, and fall.
Okay, that's good to know. A question about how do you get to Basin 3?
Basin 3 is a bit of a trek. You would have to follow you have to go around the S curves all the way, and you would have to follow the Hutterite Road, which is uh, Brotherhood Hutterite. You go almost, I'll say, about 9-10 kilometers south, and I believe it's 792. Don't quote me on that. If people are wanting, I'm more than happy to provide those directions. But that's how you get to Basin 3, because then you have to turn right and you drive a bit going west, and then you'll see a a fenced in area that has the Ducks Unlimited sign. It has the IBA sign. It said this is a nesting area. Please walk. If you have dogs, just have them on the leash and that. I'm more than happy to provide that information further so I can get a map so I can properly get it to individuals.
Okay, that's great. I just want to point out there was a question about is there contact phone or email for people to report issues or questionable activity? And Kaya has added the email address for Frank Lake Stewards at naturecalgary.com. So that's where you can address those issues.
Do you mind if I just add one more thing
Yes, of course.
regarding directions? One thing I forgot to mention, which is my apologies. We are going to be working with Foothills County for proper signage for the Frank Lake entrance area for Basin 1. So we are hoping to work with them collaboratively to put up proper signage that says Frank Lake Wetland Conservation Area, both on the east and west side of Highway 23, so that people aren't getting lost, because the only signage right now, which has been there for ages and it needs some TLC, is the sign that says 530 Ave. That's the only way you can get in there if you don't know the area. So please be patient, and we are working on it with the county, and I hope we can help people not get lost.
Okay, that's great. Also, a request to share the link for volunteer opportunities and possible link for this recording. We'd like to share this with a meetup hiking group based out of Calgary. So where would they
Um,
find that at the?
okay, so we will be more than happy to provide that on to the um the website for Nature Calgary, and also too, it can be posted on the Nature Calgary Facebook page. If the group is specifically wanting information, they are more than happy to reach out to me, and I will be more than happy to provide that information to them so that if more people want to come and enjoy the view, you know what, please do. I want to share the beauty and love of this area.
That's great. I just want to also point out to folks that, again, Kaya shared the Nature Calgary website, and that will be having information and on the Facebook page as well. Um, so here's a question. I'm not clear on the water sources for Frank Lake. I have heard anecdotally that there are 3. Could you clarify that, please?
So basically with Frank Lake, we have different creeks. So we have one creek that comes from Blackie that runs into Frank Lake. We have 2 creeks that they are very seasonal. So depending on the weather, the snow, pack that is in the area, plus the rainfall, also drains into Frank Lake. But because those 2 sources weren't able to upkeep with the demand of the area, especially on drought years, Ducks worked with High River, worked with Cargill and Alberta Environment to put in a steady water flow. This is the effluent outflow area at Basin 1, where there's a constant stream of water coming in, so that with this stable water coming in, it keeps Frank Lake at a stable water level to promote conservation. Now, if there's more water than is needed, there's different stages in Basin 1 and 2, 2 to 3, and 4, and going into the little bowl which goes into the Old Man River for flooding and that prevention too. I
That's
hope that answered the question.
again, I think Kaya, you posted some information, like a link for some information about location and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I've shared the map that we have on our website at Nature Calgary, and then I'm also just going to share a link to an actual Google map. So if you want to actually download that or put that on your into your phone, you can actually use the Google map, and it will take you to all the different locations. And we did that with Greg one year for the City Nature Challenge. He took us out to all the different basins. I will say that although you can travel from something like Basin 2 along the edge to Basin 4, I wouldn't recommend it unless you are very certain of your truck. You really want to have a high clearance. You really want to know that you can get unstuck. Greg, I told me of many stories where he had to go and rescue people, and we don't have the same kind of capacity to do that. So please, 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 it's better to just sort of park and walk or use the main highways when trying to get from Basin 2 to Basin 4. I've done it twice, and each time I thought, uh, hope I can get through. So, so yeah, well, over the years, that might be one of the areas that we improve. But right now, it is a muddy, rutted road, and I would not recommend travel unless you are like escaping zombies. Like it's bad. So
If I might add, I walked between Basin 2 and Basin 3 and 4. That road is a non-maintained road, so it ends past a certain residence, and I will highly recommend do not travel because I've walked it, and there are certain areas where it will engulf your vehicle and it is very deep. So if you want to go between Basin 2 and Basin 3 and 4, I will highly recommend just taking the gravel road and just parking and then walking in, because it will be a long time before you can get a tow truck in that area.
Yeah, and so it
Absolutely.
often gets flooded, so, and you don't know that until you're like way down the road, so, yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for those cautions. And that's it for the questions, and lots of comments, Amy, about a very interesting presentation. And it was very interesting. So much information since I last had an update myself. So just want to join everybody in thanking you for that. Oh, sorry, there's just one last question that jumped in there. Who deals with maintenance issues at Frank Lake?
Okay, so depending on the type of maintenance issue, you can contact myself or another member of the Frank Lake Stewardship Committee, because depending on the type, like say we had a lot of issues with the boardwalk. So I went out and took surveys, so actual images, and then I took them and forwarded them to our Ducks Unlimited liaison and notified them on the situation of the boardwalk, to the point where they came out and put the signs up to do the maintenance. But oh, pardon me, for doing the maintenance, that for like say the duck blind and the boardwalk and the road, that is strictly ducks. But what the committee has done, due to the current situation of the road leading past the gate towards the duck blind, we have had permission from Ducks Unlimited, because they only grade that road once a year and that's it. That if the road gets bad enough, and depending on the situation, we are more than happy through fundraising and funding to do an additional grade of the road to help with not having to do front end work, because we all don't want that expense. So we are glad that Ducks is working with us and that we can work as a team for maintenance issues at Frank Lake for the foreseeable future.
That's great. Are they part of the stewardship committee, Ducks Unlimited?
Ducks Unlimited is their own entity, so they're separate from the committee. So they have their own stuff and we have our own stuff. We just do a partnership together to help promote conservation, and to also promote Frank Lake as a general area for everyone to enjoy and just admire the beauty.
Okay, that's great. I think that wraps it up, actually, Amy. Lots of really positive comments. I hope you have a chance to just look at some of the comments there in the chat.
Sorry, I was a little rough to start with, because I said I just had to get into that group.
No, it was fantastic. And I mean, everybody has look at how I was stumbling when I was introducing you. So, no, that was a great presentation, lots of information and great explanation. So, thank you very much for coming tonight and providing us with all that information.
And I want to say thank you to everybody that came and were eager and interested to learn about Frank Lake. I am happy to share my passion and love for this area, and I hope my love and passion for this area kind of rubs off on you a little bit, so you can come in over here and enjoy the area just as much as I do.
Yeah, there's a last comment which I really agree with. I think it's very exciting for Nature Calgary to take up this partnership with you guys and move this forward. I think that's a really good plan going forward. So thanks again, Amy. That was a great presentation and lots of really good information. And last comment there, your passion is clear and contagious, and I would agree with that comment. That's
Well,
absolutely true. So
thank
thank you
you
for
so
sharing.
kindly.
I think that that's one of the things that helps people feel motivated to volunteer is they feel that passion and they want to be a part of that. So thanks a lot for your contribution tonight.
Thank you so much, everybody. You just fueled more of my passion for this area. Oh, you guys are just amazing. Thank you so much.
Great. Good night, everybody.